The rain poured relentlessly that evening, drumming against the windows of little Emma's house like 1,000 tiny fingers tapping for attention. She sat curled up on the couch, her favorite blue blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring out at the gray world beyond the glass. It had been a lonely week. Her parents were both buried in work, coming home late with tired smiles that never quite reached their eyes. School hadn't been much better. The other kids had been whispering about her again, calling her weird because she'd rather read books under the tree than play hopscotch at recess. Then she heard it, a faint, trembling meow. At first, Emma thought it was just the wind howling through the branches of the old oak tree in their backyard. But then it came again, weak, desperate, unmistakably alive. Her heart leaped into her throat. Without a second thought, she scrambled off the couch, nearly tripping over the hem of her oversized socks in her haste. She yanked open the drawer by the door, pulling out her bright yellow raincoat, the one with the duck buttons her grandma had sewn on last winter. Her mother called from the kitchen, "Emma, where are you?" But Emma was already out the door, the screen slamming behind her. The rain hit her face like cold needles, but she barely noticed. She followed the sound, her boots splashing through puddles that had formed in the uneven patches of the backyard. Under the oak tree, half hidden by a tangle of wet leaves, was a tiny ball of gray fur. A kitten, no bigger than her hand. Its fur was plastered to its skinny body, its golden eyes wide with terror. When it saw Emma, it let out another pitiful meow, so quiet it was almost lost in the storm. Emma's breath caught. She crouched down slowly, holding out her hand. "Hey there," she whispered. "It's okay, I won't hurt you." The kitten shrank back, but it was too weak to run. Emma didn't hesitate. She scooped it up gently, cradling it against her chest. It trembled violently, its tiny claws pricking her skin through her coat, but she didn't care. She ran back to the house, her heart pounding. Her parents were waiting at the door, her mother's face a mix of worry and exasperation. "Emma Grace, you can't just run out into a storm." Then she saw the kitten. "Please," Emma begged, her voice wobbling. "He'll die out there." Her parents exchanged a look. Her father sighed. "Just for the night," he said firmly. But Emma already knew. This kitten wasn't leaving her life anytime soon. She named him Stormy. Emma carefully carried the shivering kitten into the house, her small hands forming a protective cradle around his tiny body. Water dripped from both of them onto the hardwood floors, creating little dark puddles that reflected the warm yellow light of the living room lamps. Her father stood frozen in the doorway, his white doctor's coat still damp from his own journey through the rain. "Emma," he began, his voice tired but gentle, "you know we can't." "Please, Daddy," Emma interrupted, her big brown eyes glistening with more than just rainwater. "Look how small he is. He'll die out there all alone." She held the kitten up slightly, and as if on cue, the tiny creature let out the most pitiful mew imaginable. Dr. Carter sighed deeply, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper than usual tonight. Emma held her breath as she watched the internal struggle play out across his face. The practical doctor, who knew all the reasons they shouldn't take him astray, versus the father, who couldn't bear to see his daughter's heart break again. "One night," he finally conceded. "We'll keep him dry and fed tonight, and tomorrow we'll call animal control too." "No!" Emma's cry startled even herself. The kitten flinched in her hands. More quietly, but with equal intensity, she continued, "They'll put him in a cage. Or worse." She'd heard stories from kids at school about what happened to unwanted animals. Her father knelt down to her level, his knees cracking slightly, a sound that always made Emma giggle under normal circumstances. "Emma Bear," he said softly, using the nickname he hadn't used since before Mom left. Taking care of a living creature is a big responsibility. You have school, I have work. I'll do everything, Emma promised eagerly. I'll feed him and clean up after him and play with him and dash. Let's just get through tonight. Her father interrupted, standing up with another sigh. First, we need to dry him off properly. And you, he added, poking Emma's dripping raincoat, need a change before you catch cold. For the next hour, the Carter household became a whirlwind of activity, something it hadn't been in months. Emma raced upstairs to change into dry pajamas, while her father dug out an old towel from the linen closet. They worked together at the kitchen table, gently patting the kitten dry. Emma marveled at how small he was. His entire body fit easily on the standard kitchen towel with room to spare. He's so skinny, Emma observed, running a finger lightly along the kitten's rib cage. Each bone stood out sharply beneath the damp fur. Her father nodded, his doctor's instincts kicking in. Probably hasn't eaten properly in days. We'll need to be careful what we give him. His stomach will be sensitive. He rummaged through the fridge. No cat food, but a little plain chicken and some water should be okay for tonight. As her father prepared the food, Emma studied their unexpected guest. Now that he was drying off, she could see his fur was actually a beautiful silver gray, with faint tabby stripes that became visible as it fluffed up. His eyes, wide and alert despite his ordeal, were an unusual golden-green color that reminded Emma of the sunlight filtering through leaves in summer. What should we name him? Emma asked as she carefully placed the kitten on the floor near the small plate of shredded chicken. Her father chuckled. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. He's not. His words trailed off as the kitten approached the food cautiously, sniffed once, then began devouring it with desperate little bites. Emma and her father exchanged glances at the obvious starvation the small animal had endured. I think we should call him Storm, Emma declared, because we found him in the storm. The kitten, as if in agreement, paused mid-bite to look up at them, his tiny face smeared with chicken bits. Then he sneezed adorably, making Emma burst into giggles, a sound that had become rare in the Carter household. Her father smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes for the first time in months. Storm it is, then. But just for tonight, remember. That night, Emma constructed a makeshift bed for Storm from an old shoebox lined with soft towels. She placed it carefully next to her own bed, whispering goodnight to the kitten, who was already curled up in a tight ball, his tiny sides rising and falling with each breath. As she climbed into bed, Emma realized something remarkable. For the first time since her mother left, she wasn't thinking about the empty space at the dinner table, or the way her father's smiles never quite reached his eyes anymore. All her thoughts were occupied by the little life, now sleeping peacefully beside her bed. Down the hall, Dr. Carter stood in the doorway of his bedroom, watching his daughter through her partially open door. He saw the way she kept peeking over at the shoebox, the small smile on her face as she finally settled into sleep. With a quiet sigh, he pulled out his phone and canceled his planned call to animal control for the next morning. The storm outside had passed, but in the Carter household, a new chapter was just beginning. Morning sunlight streamed through Emma's curtains, painting golden stripes across her bedroom floor. She woke with a start, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar warmth curled against her stomach. Looking down, she found Storm stretched out beside her, his tiny paws twitching as he dreamed. Sometime during the night, he had climbed out of his shoebox and onto her bed. Emma held her breath, afraid to move and disturb him. His fur, now completely dry, was impossibly soft against her fingertips. As she gently stroked his back, Storm's eyes fluttered open, revealing those mesmerizing golden-green depths. He blinked up at her slowly, then stretched with a tiny yawn that showed all his needle-like teeth. "Good morning, Stormy," Emma whispered, The kitten responded by bumping his head against her hand, a gesture that sent warmth flooding through Emma's chest. Downstairs, the smell of pancakes wafted up from the kitchen. Emma scooped Storm into her arms, marveling at how perfectly he fit in the crook of her elbow. "Let's go see Dad," she murmured into his velvety ear. Her father stood at the stove, his work clothes already on, but his tie still loose around his neck. He turned as Emma entered, his eyebrows rising when he saw the kitten in her arms. "I see our guest made himself comfortable," he remarked, but there was no anger in his voice. "Can we keep him, Dad? Please?" Emma asked, holding Storm up like a fuzzy offering. "Look how good he is." As if on cue, Storm sneezed again, then began purring loudly as Emma scratched behind his ears. Dr. Carter's stern expression softened. He set down his spatula and crouched to eye level with the kitten. "You realize this means responsibility, right?" he said, more to Emma than to Storm. "Feeding, cleaning the litter box, vet visits." Emma nodded so vigorously her ponytail bounced. "I'll do everything. I promise." Her father sighed, but the corners of his mouth twitched upward. "Well, I did some reading last night. Kittens this young usually need to eat 3 to 4 times a day. Think you can handle that before and after school?" Emma's heart soared. This wasn't a no. This was practically a yes. "I can set alarms on my watch," she declared. Then, more quietly, she added, "He needs us, Dad, just like we." She trailed off, but her father's eyes grew suspiciously shiny. After breakfast, with tiny bits of pancake for Storm, Emma and her father made their first trip to the pet store. As they walked through the aisles filled with toys, food, and supplies, Emma noticed something remarkable. Her father was smiling more than she'd seen in months. He asked the store clerk thoughtful questions about kitten care, and even picked out a plush mouse toy, because every cat should have something to hunt. That afternoon, they transformed a corner of the living room into Storm's domain, complete with a proper bed, scratching post, and food station. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, watching as Storm explored his new kingdom. He sniffed every inch cautiously, his tail twitching with excitement. When he discovered the toy mouse, he pounced with such enthusiasm that he somersaulted over it, making both Emma and her father burst into laughter. As evening fell, something magical happened. Storm, tired from his day of exploration, climbed into Emma's lap as she sat reading on the couch. He kneaded his paws against her legs for a moment, then curled into a perfect circle, his purrs vibrating through her entire body. Emma's father looked up from his medical journal, his gaze softening at the sight. In that moment, something shifted in the Carter household. The silence that had been filled with unspoken sadness now held comfortable quiet. The empty spaces between father and daughter began to close, bridged by a tiny gray kitten who had somehow, in just one day, become the heart of their home. That night, as Emma prepared for bed, she didn't bother with a shoebox. She simply lifted the covers, and Storm scampered underneath, curling up in the warm hollow behind her knees. As she drifted off to sleep, Emma realized she hadn't thought about her mother's absence all day. The hole in her heart was still there, but now it was filled with purrs and soft fur and the joy of being needed by someone small and vulnerable. Down the hall, Dr. Carter stood in the doorway once more, watching his daughter sleep with the kitten nestled against her. He pulled out his phone and sent a text he never thought he'd write. "We've adopted a kitten. Emma named him Storm. You should come meet him sometime." After a long pause, he added, "We miss you." Then, before he could change his mind, he pressed send. The school bell's shrill ring made Emma jump as she hurried through the crowded hallway, her backpack straps digging into her shoulders. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't dreading going home, not with Storm waiting for her. She could still picture him that morning, batting at her shoelaces as she tied them, his tiny teeth making harmless grabs at her fingers. "Watch it, weirdo." Emma stumbled as someone shoved past her. Jessica Carter, no relation, though the coincidence of sharing a last name had never stopped the meanest girl in 3rd grade from tormenting her. Jessica's posse giggled as Emma's books scattered across the linoleum floor. "Oops," Jessica said sweetly, flipping her blonde curls. "Guess you should look where you're going." Emma knelt to gather her things, her cheeks burning. The whisper started immediately. No wonder her mom left. Her dad's probably sorry he got stuck with her. Such a freak. The words slithered under her skin like cold worms, settling in the pit of her stomach, where they always festered. Then her fingers brushed against something unexpected in her backpack's side pocket. The Polaroid she'd taken of Storm that morning, his tiny paws kneading her pillow. A sudden warmth cut through the cold shame. Storm didn't care if she read too much or didn't know the latest playground games. He just wanted her. The incident with Mrs. Henderson. Emma practically ran home, her breath coming in little white puffs in the autumn air. She burst through the front door to find her father in an unusual position, on his hands and knees in the living room, askew, peering under the couch. "Storm, steal your stethoscope again?" Emma asked, dropping her backpack. Dr. Carter emerged with a sheepish grin, holding up the missing medical instrument. "3rd time this week. I think he's trying to tell me to work less." He studied her face. "Rough day." Emma hesitated. Normally, she'd shrug it off, but the Polaroid was still warm in her pocket. "Jessica Carter pushed me. Said stuff. Like usual." Her father's jaw tightened. "Do I need to call?" "No." The thought of parental intervention made her stomach clench worse than the teasing. "It's fine. Really." She forced a smile. "Can we make Storm's Halloween costume instead?" The vet visit that changed everything. 2 days later, Emma sat in the sterile-smelling vet's office, clutching Storm's carrier as Dr. Rosen listened to his tiny heartbeat. "Perfectly healthy," the vet announced, scratching Storm under the chin. "Though I'd recommend." The clinic door chimed. Emma froze. A familiar floral perfume cut through the antiseptic smell. "Sorry I'm late." Emma didn't dare turn around. That voice, soft and musical, the one that used to sing her lullabies, sent electric shocks down her spine. Her mother stood in the doorway, holding a catnip pumpkin. The snow fell heavier now, blanketing the Carter household in perfect white silence. Emma sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, stroking Storm's back as he chased Christmas light reflections. Downstairs, the murmurs between her parents had faded into something unfamiliar. Not quite arguing, not quite peace. The truth unfolds. A soft knock startled her. Her mother stood holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "Can I come in?" Emma nodded stiffly. Storm immediately abandoned the lights to rub against Claire's ankles, purring wildly. "He remembers me," Claire murmured, setting down the mugs. Emma froze. "What do you mean?" Her mother unfolded a familiar blue-checked scarf, the one she'd worn the morning she left. Storm pounced on it joyfully. "I found him freezing by a dumpster that night," Claire confessed, voice breaking. "Spent 3 days at the emergency vet. When I called home, your father said you'd stop speaking. I thought if you hated me instead of blaming yourself." Emma's vision blurred. All those months of Jessica's taunts. "Your mom left because of you," dissolved like sugar in hot cocoa. The bully's secret. Next morning, Emma confronted Jessica with Storm's photo. "My mom left to save this kitten. What's your excuse?" To everyone's shock, Jessica burst into tears. "My dad dumped Storm at the grocery store when I saw you with him." She swiped at tears. "I was jealous you got to keep him." Christmas miracle. On December 24th, the Carter household glowed brighter than the tree lights. Claire's suitcase sat unpacked. Storm's handmade stocking hung with the others. When Jessica arrived with a carefully wrapped cat toy, Storm flopped onto her feet in ultimate feline forgiveness. The ice shattered completely. Epilogue. 1 year later, Storm, now a majestic tabby, surveyed his kingdom from the highest shelf. Below, his humans laughed together, their fractured pieces mended by one small kitten's love.